Bernie Madoff has a few thoughts and some strongly held opinions on investment scams, and he shared them in a recent prison interview with our reporter Siddle Patel. Hi, I'm Jim Jelter at MarketWatch, and Siddle caught up with Mr. Madoff at Butner Federal Prison in North Carolina, where he's serving a 150-year sentence for defrauding investors of billions of dollars in the biggest Ponzi scheme ever uncovered. How did he do it? How did he get away with it for so many years? And is this the kind of white-collar crime that's likely to be repeated? Well, answering the last question first, Madoff is convinced that as long as the opportunity presents itself, there's always going to be people out there willing to break the law. And financial markets, despite all the regulations and governmental oversight, still offer plenty of opportunities to make a fortune outside the law. But he's also got a few thoughts on how unfair the market can be for the little guy, the retail investor who Madoff says still falls prey to the sharks on Wall Street. So what can be done to keep from becoming Wall Street's lunch? Well, Madoff suggests providing the Securities and Exchange Commission with more resources to get the job done. He says the SEC is grossly undercapitalized, lacking the money to hire the right people and keep them. He called the SEC a training ground for young regulators who, once they've learned the rules, move on to higher salaries at the big Wall Street financial houses. On the growing influence of hedge funds, Madoff said they've become so sophisticated, so powerful, that they're scaring individual investors out of the marketplace. What to do about it? Madoff recommends registering all hedge funds. That means doing away with the exemption given to funds managing less than $100 million, which he calls a major flaw in the rules. Currently, those so-called smaller funds are not subject to an investment advisor inspection by the SEC, and that's fertile ground for potential scammers. Madoff's fund was one of those, and he's convinced he would have been caught much sooner if he'd had to show his books to the SEC. He also has some thoughts on accounting firms. They need to be audited by other accounting firms to make sure everyone's playing by the same rules. So what advice does Madoff have for the average investor? He believes index funds are the best way to go. They have lower commission rates and more professional management teams. They're also safer. You're much less likely to get scammed by an index fund than by a brokered fund. If you still want to go the brokerage route, stick with big public firms. They're subject to closer regulatory scrutiny than the smaller firms. Another piece of advice, read up on how the markets work and ask lots of questions. Madoff says Wall Street isn't that complicated. If you don't understand how a broker is making money, ask him. If he doesn't give you a straight answer, don't invest with him. Finally, to make sure your money is all there, ask for it back from time to time. That's the best way to make sure a firm is legitimate. And that's good advice for a guy who for years convinced investors his fund was making them billions. Unfortunately, it was all fictitious. They would have known that if they'd ever asked to see the money.